The story of Noah's Ark and the Great Flood. In the beginning, the world was pure. The earth was fresh beneath the hands of its creator. Rivers sparkled like veins of silver, mountains rose like great sentinels of time, and mankind walked freely beneath heaven's gaze. But as the generations of Adam multiplied upon the earth, something changed. Humanity drifted far from the path of righteousness. The beauty that God had woven into the fabric of creation began to unravel. Violence, corruption and sin darkened every corner of the world. The hearts of men grew cruel and restless. As written in Genesis 6:5, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The world that once echoed with the laughter of innocence now roared with greed and bloodshed. Idols were worshipped. The strong preyed upon the weak. The earth groaned beneath the weight of human sin. And in this dark hour, God looked upon his creation and grieved. The corruption of the world. The scripture tells us in Genesis 6:6, the Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. Imagine that, the Creator heartbroken by the violence of his own creation. But among the chaos, one man stood apart, Noah, a man of integrity, faith, and obedience. In a generation where no one sought righteousness, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Genesis 6:8. Noah lived in a world that mocked goodness, but he walked with God. He taught his family the ways of truth while others laughed and scorned. The ancient texts describe a world teeming with corruption. Even the natural order was tainted. The sons of God took wives from the daughters of men, Genesis 6:2, and violence filled the earth. And then came the divine decree. In Genesis 6:13, the Lord spoke to Noah, saying, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth." The fate of the world was sealed, but mercy was still alive, for God would preserve a remnant through one righteous man. The command to build the ark. The Lord instructed Noah, "Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Genesis 6:14-15. That's roughly 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. An enormous vessel, unlike anything seen before in the ancient world. It was to have 3 decks, with a door in its side and a window above for light and air. God told Noah that a great flood, a deluge so vast it would cover even the highest mountains, was coming to cleanse the earth of its corruption. But Noah and his family would be spared. Alongside them, 2 of every kind of living creature, male and female, would enter the ark to preserve life. Imagine the disbelief of the people as they watched Noah, day after day, year after year, building a colossal wooden vessel on dry land. They mocked him, called him a fool, a madman, a false prophet. The skies were clear, the rivers calm, no sign of rain. But Noah did not falter. His hands were steady, his faith unshaken. As Genesis 6:22 declares, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. He labored with his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, cutting timber, sealing the boards with pitch, and preparing provisions for what was to come. Every hammer strike was an act of faith. Every log placed upon another was a declaration of trust in God's word. The gathering of the animals. When the ark was complete, the earth trembled beneath the whisper of divine movement. Animals from every corner of the world began to appear. Pairs of each kind, as if guided by an unseen hand. Lions walked beside lambs. Eagles soared over herds of deer. The serpents slithered quietly beneath the feet of elephants. The people who had mocked Noah were now speechless, watching in disbelief as the creatures of the earth obeyed the will of God. Genesis 7:9 tells us, "There went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah." In addition, God commanded 7 pairs of every clean animal and bird for future offerings and for food. Genesis 7:2-3. Noah gathered food for his family and for all the animals, grains, fruits, herbs and water stored in great jars. And when all was ready, God gave his final command. "Go into the ark, you and all your household, because I have found you righteous in this generation." Genesis 7. Shantusados, then. The time had come when Noah, his wife, his sons and their wives, 8 souls in all, entered the ark. The Lord himself shut the door behind them. Genesis 7:16. Then the skies broke open. Thunder rolled like the roar of an army. Lightning split the heavens. The ground shuddered as fountains burst forth from beneath, deep springs of the earth exploding upward. Rain poured without pause, day and night. Genesis 7:12 says, "And rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights." The people who had mocked Noah screamed for refuge, pounding on the sides of the ark, crying for mercy. But the door was sealed. Judgment had come. The waters rose higher and higher, swallowing valleys, forests and mountains alike. Great beasts were swept away. Cities vanished beneath the waves. The once bustling earth became silent, a vast ocean stretching to the horizon. The ark lifted gently from the ground and floated upon the face of the waters. It groaned with the weight of life within it, yet it did not sink. It was guided by the hand of God himself. As Genesis 7:17-20 recounts, the waters increased and lifted the ark high above the earth. The mountains were covered to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Everything that had the breath of life perished. All living things on land, birds, livestock, and mankind. Only Noah and those with him in the ark remained alive. Genesis 7:23. The long silence. 150 days of flood. The rain stopped after 40 days, but the floodwaters continued to swell and cover the earth for 150 days. The ark drifted aimlessly across an endless sea. The world was reborn in silence. Inside, Noah and his family tended to the animals. The days blurred together, feeding, cleaning, praying. The air was damp and heavy, the only sounds the creak of wood and the distant cry of beasts. Yet even in that isolation, Noah trusted. Then, as Genesis 8:1 declares, God remembered Noah. This does not mean he had forgotten. Rather, it means God turned his focus once more toward his faithful servant. A great wind began to blow across the earth, and the waters slowly began to recede. The fountains of the deep closed. The rain from heaven was restrained. After many weeks, the ark came to rest upon the mountains of Ararat, Genesis 8:4, a rugged range in what is now eastern Turkey, the waiting and the doves. But the world was still covered with water. Noah waited patiently. After 40 more days, he opened the window of the ark and sent out a raven. The raven flew back and forth until the waters dried up from the earth, Genesis 8:7. Then Noah released a dove, hoping it might find dry ground. But the dove found nowhere to rest and returned to him. 7 days later, Noah sent the dove out again, and it returned in the evening, carrying an olive leaf in its beak, Genesis 8:11. The sight brought tears to Noah's eyes, the first living sign of a restored earth. He waited another 7 days and sent the dove once more. This time it did not return. The message was clear. The earth was ready for life again. The new beginning. When the ground was dry, God spoke again to Noah. "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every living creature that is with you, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number upon it." The great wooden door creaked open, and sunlight, for the first time in months, streamed into the ark. Noah, his family, and the animals stepped onto dry land. The air was fresh and clean, filled with promise. Grass began to sprout. The mountains gleamed with dew. Noah's first act was not to build a home or tend the animals. It was to worship. He built an altar to the Lord and offered burnt sacrifices from every clean animal and bird. Genesis 8:20. And the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood." Genesis 8:21. A covenant of mercy was born, God's covenant with Noah. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth." Genesis 9:1. Humanity was given a second chance, a new beginning. God also gave new laws. Mankind could now eat the flesh of animals, but they must not consume blood, for life is in the blood. And anyone who shed human blood would answer for it, for mankind was made in the image of God. But the most powerful moment came when God made a covenant, an unbreakable promise, with Noah, his descendants, and all living creatures. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. Genesis 9:11. And to seal this covenant, God placed a bow in the clouds, a radiant rainbow stretching across the sky. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth, and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Genesis 9:14-15. The rainbow became a divine reminder of mercy, a bridge between heaven and earth, a sign of hope and reconciliation. Noah lived another 350 years after the flood, and in total he lived 950 years before he died. Genesis 9:28-29. His sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the fathers of the nations, spreading across the earth. From Shem came the lineage that would one day lead to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and eventually the birth of Christ himself. Noah's obedience became the foundation of faith. Through him the world was renewed. The story of Noah's Ark is more than an ancient tale. It's a mirror held up to humanity. It's about judgment and mercy, destruction and renewal, obedience and faith. It reminds us that even when the world turns away from righteousness, a single act of faith can change history. Noah's story tells us that obedience, even when the world mocks us, is the key to survival. That hope endures even through the flood, and that God's mercy is never truly gone. It just waits for the heart willing to listen. From the ashes of judgment came new life. From the flood of destruction came the promise of redemption. And whenever the rains fall and the colours stretch across the sky, we remember that ancient promise, a covenant unbroken since the dawn of time. The story of Noah is not merely history. It is a reflection of us all, of faith that stands firm amid chaos, of hope that survives the storm, and of a God whose mercy outlasts even the flood.